Hey, you're listening to Pint of Comics. I'm Lloyd.
And I'm John. We swear a lot and spoil shit.
Fuck yeah.
Enjoy the show.
I'd like you to meet.
Yeah, Mom.
Charlie, this is our next door neighbor, Jerry Dandridge.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Pint of Comics. I'm John. Lloyd is on a short break. He'll be back soon. Joining me tonight in the co-host seat is Professor Joe. You know Joe from such episode classics, where we talked about James Belushi and a dog starring Vehicle K9 and the Nuclear Man vs. Superman movie, Superman 4. Joe's really been in for a couple of good movies so far. Joe, what's going on, man?
Nothing much. Thanks for having me. It's good to still be a part of the Pint family and be a co-host. I'm not a full pint of comics. I'm more like a taster of comics. You get me 4 ounces at a time.
You're great, Joe. And you know, the way I trick you people into doing the co-host gig for me when Lloyd's not here is I give you all the Lloyd work. I say, get box office, get cast, because I don't want to do any of that stuff. Well, I just want to host the show, you know?
And I need notes, so that's good.
Yeah. Tonight, I'm super excited about tonight's guest because this is a long time coming. First off, I got to say, his name is Isaac Thorne. Met Isaac online as you meet most people nowadays. Let's just be honest. This is just the way it is now, right? You meet people online. Isaac is a novelist, a storyteller, mostly in the horror vein. Some very cool stuff. As a matter of fact, Isaac was on our radio show one time, actually announced the release of his first novel, The Gordon Place, on Pint of Comics Radio. I think there's something supernatural about Isaac. Here's a couple of reasons why. Number one, he will not let us see him on video. So I'm wondering if that means he's a specter of some sort. And the night we recorded, or the night we did the radio show, our show's in Middletown, Connecticut, it was one of the worst rainstorms ever, and the power got knocked out, the computers got knocked out. We managed to get the show out, but when I went to go get a recording of the show, it wasn't there. The computers had gone down. So I'm thinking he's a specter of some sort. That's just me. Isaac, can you speak to that?
All I can say is that if you'll remember in Halloween 4 through 6, there was the whole plot of the Curse of Thorne, the Cult of Thorne. So yeah, that's all I know about things like that. I am not a specter. I am a human, as far as I know. Yeah. I did announce the Gordon Place on the radio show, and made sure that you guys knew that was an exclusive. That was yeah.
Awesome. It was awesome that you did that. I was so happy about that. And the Gordon Place, so awesome. It's the story of basically, without getting too far into it, the effects of emotional abuse, I guess, right? Is that how you would say? But there's more to it.
Yes, absolutely. It's really, it started out as just a story when I really didn't know where it was going yet. It started out as just a story about a guy who basically gets trapped in his childhood home and, has to deal with the demons from his childhood. I didn't know yet what those demons were going to be, but that is the basic plot of the story. He is a grown man who has never really escaped his childhood or escaped the ghost of his abusive father.
There's a section in the book that I think this is a high compliment, but books to me, and I could be wrong, but books to me don't lend themselves as movies do with me remembering sections of them as well. Okay, so you see a classic movie and you remember this scene or that scene. Books, I love books, but sometimes you don't really maybe latch onto stuff as easily as the visual. But you have the whole bit where the protagonist of the story ends up falling into the basement of his childhood home and it's completely pitch black, and it was literally terrifying. Like as he's trying to like find his way around, because I'm not a basement guy, right? Like I own a house,
Right.
I have a basement. I'm 45 years old. I don't even like going down there, right?
Yeah.
I can't. If I fell into my basement pitch black, I'd probably just fetal position it for the rest of the night. I don't know. That's just me.
I'm with you. That would be me too.
Yeah, I wouldn't want.
I'm glad you think that was terrifying. That's awesome. I take that as high praise. And I mean, to me, there is nothing more terrifying than absolute darkness. You can't see, you can feel, but you also lose any sense of direction, unless you happen upon a piece of furniture or a corner of the wall and it's familiar to your touch, which is kind of what he does to try to find his flashlight that he lost in the tumble. He feels his way to the wall and sort of makes his way around the room that way. But yeah, I take that as high praise. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. What I was going to say earlier was, we met online early on in the early days of the Pint. And I could say probably without a doubt, you have been one of the longest supporters of the show from the beginning, or at least from whenever you started listening, but it's been a long time. I could say that. And don't think that's not, appreciated or noticed. You're always great with, retweeting, and then when you listen to an episode, you tweet that out, and it's just it's great. And I know you're a big podcast guy too. Like I think we talked one time. You listen to I listen to a few every week. You listen to a ton, right?
I do. I listen to at least 5 a day. Now, I think I also told you I listen to them on double speed most of the time.
I was going to say, is this only the second time you've ever heard my voice in its real natural state, from besides the radio show?
It's more than twice. There was one episode you told me there's music on this one. You're going to want to listen to it on normal speed.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Yeah. So I think I listened to that episode on one by, but
I'm gonna have to try that out. I'm gonna have to see what that sounds like.
I learned to use it during training at work because I didn't want to sit there through a video. I can't fast forward, so I just hit it on 2 times, and the training goes a lot faster.
The weird thing is when I listen to a podcast on one by now, or an audiobook on one by, it sounds too slow.
It sounds so normal is too slow now.
Right.
All right. Well, this is a Pint Movie Invitational episode. I've explained it a few times over the last couple episodes. If you have not heard, although some of them probably haven't come out yet, we've been doing the Pint Movie Invitationals since the end of 2018. We've done them straight through. We probably have close to 50 or 55 out by now. This is one of the last ones, at least for now. In 2022, we're going to a format where we're going to still do the Triple T episodes and the 100 Proof episodes. But when it comes to movie reviews, it's going to be me and Lloyd picking the movie. So people could still come on, but it's going to be, we're doing this movie and come along and go for the ride. Because it just got to the point where it's 3 years now we've been sitting here just letting people tell us what to fucking talk about. And it's been fun. And there have been a lot of great movies, and we've discovered a lot of great movies, and a lot more good than bad. By the way, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, bad, but so we're going to change that format. So Isaac, you're one of, I wanted to get you rushed in because we've been talking about doing this movie for quite a while. Why don't you tell everybody out there what film you picked for the PMI? I
picked 1985 Fright Night, written and directed by Tom Holland.
Yeah, and you got a thing for this, don't you? Because I know you often retweet your podcast appearances that you did on other shows. And I think you retweeted one that you did this movie on another show, right?
Yes.
You must really love this movie if you're willing to talk about it a whole nother time.
I love this. I've talked about it multiple times. I did an episode of Dear Final Girl where I discuss, they have this horror origins segment that they do where you talk about, where your love for horror came from. And I did a segment on there about Fright Night, and I talked about it on another podcast about remakes where we compared the 1985 version to the 2011 remake. So yeah, I spent a great number of weekends in my room as a kid, or as a teenager really, watching this movie and rewinding it and watching it again and showing it to friends when they would come over and trying to get my hands on the soundtrack,
Okay.
So, yeah, I love this movie. I love it.
All right. Before we dig into that, the Manster, when he's here, always loves to do the 5-question segment. And he's not here, but I'm going to do it with Isaac because I got a couple things. These are all basically this or that type questions. But just, to kind of gauge your personality for the listener out there. So the first one, answer however you feel comfortable. And this can go for a movie. This can go this question for a movie, for a story, for whatever. Slasher or supernatural?
Supernatural.
Yeah, I figured that'd be the answer.
Yeah, I like a slasher. Halloween is actually one of my favorite horror movies, and one I revisit often, but I much prefer a supernatural horror to a slasher.
Okay. Now this one's this is a food one, all right, because we all have to eat. And it's that old adage, right? Apples or oranges?
Apples. Orange peels make my lips sore. So unless the orange is already, and they make the acid gets under your fingernails when you pull them apart. So unless I'm using, utensils or something, I would definitely prefer an apple.
Any particular type of apple?
I used to be a big fan of the Granny Smith, but that's gotten too tart for me. So now if I'm grabbing an apple, it's a Washington Red.
Joe, you look like you shook your head a little bit when you said Granny Smith. Are you a Macintosh guy? Or did you take offense to that? Or
No, I understand the change in taste over time. I'm a Pink Lady man myself.
Those are good. So this is more for movies. Jump scares or subtle terror moments?
Subtle terror moments, definitely. And I think jump scares became too relied upon in the last decade once, the paranormal activities and things like that hit it big. And they became easy to predict for me. There'd be the music sting or the setup, obvious setup for the jump scare. So I'm expecting it. And if there's not much more substance to your horror than the jump scare, I don't mind a jump scare, but if there's not more substance to it than that, then I lose interest.
Okay. All right. 2 more. So this is remake. This is horror remake movies. Friday the 13th, 2009 or Nightmare on Elm Street, 2010.
That's a good one, because I really didn't care for either remake.
All right, so that's a fair answer. That's a fair answer. So now, if someone said, like, if you were in like Buffalo Bill's well, and you had a little TV down there, and he said, you can watch one of these to entertain yourself, which one would you pick?
I would probably pick Friday the 13th over Nightmare on Elm Street.
All right, 5th question, final question. This is the most important question in the world, Isaac. All right, cake or pie?
Pie.
Pie. Okay, now.
Pie.
Now, it's a little addendum question to that. What type of pie? Fruit pie, cream pie, like a savory pie?
Well, I'm gonna go totally autumn and seasonal here and say pumpkin pie, because now apparently you can get that any time of the year at my local grocery store. So every time I've bought a pie over the past year, it's been a pumpkin pie.
Okay, yeah, it's all those white women with their pumpkin spice. They're making it. Do you get that down there in Tennessee? I don't know, but in Connecticut, once like the leaves turn up here, everything becomes pumpkin spice. Yeah,
yes,
Trader Joe's.
It is the same way here. Although I will say I cannot handle the Dunkin' Donuts pumpkin spice. I know Dunkin' is huge up where you guys are, I believe, but I can't handle their pumpkin spice. It's too pumpkin spicy for me.
If you fart in Connecticut, you farted on a Dunkin' Donuts. It doesn't matter. I don't know if it's true, but my wife told me last week they're installing one in my basement, but I won't go down there because I'm afraid of it. All right, let's talk about Fright Night. We're going to get into the cast in a minute. Joe's going to give us that information, but here's a little bit of info about Fright Night. Fright Night came out on August 2nd, 1985. Summer movie. They didn't even put this out in October. So they must have had some faith on it. I guess from what I was reading, that might not be the case though. They kind of were pushing a few other movies, and Fright Night just kind of like a fart in the wind. Just like they just put it out there and let it happen. Written and directed by Tom Holland. Tom Holland, as a writer, wrote Psycho 2, which is a fantastic sequel. And a movie that as a kid, I haven't seen it in years, but as a kid I loved, and I bet you Joe probably loved it too. Cloak and Dagger with Dabney Coleman.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
I saw that in theaters.
And it's like an HBO movie. That was on HBO every day, of our childhood, right, Joe?
Exactly.
Cloak and Dagger. He also wrote and directed Child's Play, the original Child's Play, or co-wrote. He co-wrote that with Don Mancini, the creator. And I didn't realize this, but Tom Holland also did Thinner. That's Stephen King, Gypsy Curse, fat lawyer, brush of the cheek, and then he just starts to waste away. This thing was filmed from December 3rd of 1984 to February 23rd of 85. Laird International Studio in Culver City, California. That whole neighborhood was a set, was a back lot, the whole Charlie's neighborhood. By the way, I didn't get the number down, but the name Charlie is said in this movie like 77 times. And if you watch it, it certainly fucking is. Charlie, Charlie, Charlie. It's fucking nonstop. It was also filmed on the UCLA campus. I think that's where the school stuff was in LA there. Joe, why don't we go through who was in this thing?
So, we have William Ragsdale as Charlie Brewster. He's done a lot of TV work, but he's known, I think, for Fright Night, I think Justified, and of course, Herman's Head.
Herman's Head. Were you a fan of Herman's Head, Isaac, by any chance?
I watched a few episodes of Herman's Head. I don't remember that much about it, honestly. I was in college at the time and more likely to be, not even home when it was airing. So I think I saw a couple of episodes of it, but I did recognize who the star was.
I'll be honest with you. That was a trick question. There were no fans of Herman's Head.
Yeah, I know.
it somehow ran for 3 years. When I was doing research for this, for this episode, I always check that out. And even if I don't write the cast on, I still kind of do a little of that stuff. And it said 91 to 94. If you had asked me, if you had a gun to my wife's head and said, how many years did Herman's Head last? I would go 1 year at best. And they would have shot her right in the fucking head because it went to 94. It went 3 years.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I had no
couldn't believe it
idea.
either. I couldn't believe it.
Crazy.
That's incredible.
And the other thing, William Ragsdale. Joe, did you read who the original choice from the studio, who they wanted to play Charlie was?
I don't think I caught that one.
Charlie Sheen. They wanted Charlie Sheen, but the reason they went with Ragsdale is Charlie Sheen, they said, came across as too heroic. Like he had been in Red Dawn. They wanted Ragsdale because he looked more like the kid next door, even though, funnily enough, like in every movie ever, he was 24 years old when he filmed this. He was not 16 or 17, whatever he was.
Well, he's also goofier. I don't think Charlie Sheen could sell like the guy who would sit there on Saturday night and watch Monster Theater or Vampire Theater.
Yeah. Yeah, you're probably right. Charlie Sheen's too good looking and cool. At that point. Let me put that out there. At that point, circa 1985. All right, Joe, who else is in this thing?
We got Chris Sarandon as Jerry Dandridge, the vampire. He's Mr. Susan Sarandon for a while. Princess Bride. He's in Child's Play, also directed by Tom Holland. He was the voice of Jack Skellington in The Nightmare Before Christmas. I was kind of surprised by that one.
The speaking voice, not the singing voice.
Yeah.
The singing voice is Danny Elfman.
He's, I think he actually should have been more famous. He's a pretty good actor. I kind of envisioned, he read the article about a little bit up on the movie, and he was talking about how he couldn't be in a horror movie because, I figure he's like, I was, Hamlet in Shakespeare in the Park or whatever. And he gets this horror movie and he seemed to have read the script and loved it. And then, of course, he's in Child's Play. So, he definitely hit it off with Chris Sarandon, or hit it off with Tom Holland.
Isaac, you a big fan of Sarandon in this?
I am actually. I think he brings everything that you thought as a kid in 1985, everything that you traditionally knew about vampires at that point, or I knew about vampires at that point from movies. He brings to that. He's got the monster. He's got the sociopathy. Loneliness, the lovelorn. There's that whole aspect of it with Amy and how she resembles someone from his past. I think he did a fantastic job with it, especially. And if you show Fright Night to someone now and they've already seen The Princess Bride, they are surprised to see Chris Sarandon in this role because they associate him with Humperdinck. Once they've watched this movie, they've come around. They see him as this suave, smooth character that he's supposed to play, charming character that the vampire is supposed to be. So I think he did an incredible job.
Yeah, and he was really involved in this. So he was mostly a theater actor. I didn't realize till doing the research for this, I thought that him and Susan Sarandon just had the same last name because I had never read that there was any connection. But they were married so long ago. That's why they got married in like 70 and divorced in 79. So that was a lifetime ago. But some of the stuff that he brought to this role, he helped them apply his makeup. Like while they were applying his facial makeup, he was applying the fingers and helping because he was used to that theater experience. He came up with the little trait that Jerry's always eating apples because he said that he figured somewhere in his DNA there was fruit bat. And I just think because he's eating apples throughout the whole movie. And one of the other things was he actually suggested. It was not in the original script. Apparently, this is all stuff I'm reading online. But he suggested that they add in connection between him and Amy. That originally it was just going to be he was going to kidnap Amy and hold her because it was Charlie's girlfriend. He came up with the idea of the painting and the let's make this like a Dracula Mina Harker thing, through the ages. So that's pretty, and that's also impressive on Tom Holland's part that he's willing to listen and go, this guy's got some good ideas.
Absolutely. And I love the apple thing because in the movie, you're seeing him eating apples and you wonder, why is he always eating apples? And they don't explain it. They never say, well, he's part fruit bat. You only learn that, or I only learned it decades later when when the information became available on the internet.
Yeah.
Up till that point, it was just it's cool that the characters in this movie have these personality quirks that aren't necessarily relevant to anything, but they help define the character.
Yep,
it's
absolutely.
pretty impressive to come up with a fruit bat because they're not particularly, they eat fruit. They're not like the kind of vampire or bats you associate with vampires. So that's a pretty cool idea.
Yeah, no, I thought it was great. And as I watched this, because I had not seen this in quite a while, like I noticed that like this guy's eating an apple in every fucking scene he's in just about. Like he's doing good for his own body. All right, Joe, who else we got in this thing?
To keep the doctor away.
Yeah.
Amanda Bierce is Amy Peterson. And let's face it, what else besides Married with Children do we really know her from?
Yeah. She's a big director of TV shows, I guess.
I saw that, yeah. And a big ally. And I think she came out as a lesbian mid-90s, late 90s. And so I think she's done a lot of LGBT movies and stuff like that. And big supporter of that since late 90s, mid-90s.
Her and Ed O'Neill hate the fuck out of each other too. I guess they never got along on Married to Children. I was watching an interview with him one time, and he just said that they just butted heads the entire time. So, but she's good in this. She's good in this for sure.
Yeah. And then we have Roddy McDowall as Peter Vincent, the not really vampire hunter actor who hosts the old actor who hosts all the vampire movies on TV. And I think he's best known, it looks like, for multiple Planet of the Apes movies. A lot of guest starring roles, some of the Batman animated series. He's on The Tick, but I think it looks like Planet of the Apes, he did 2 different characters in multiple movies. So
yeah, he was Cornelius, I think, right?
Yeah, but he also played Caesar, it said. So he was 2 different characters, which is weird.
Well, Planet of the Apes, they just throw a different ape, like face on you and you can just play whoever you want. I was never a big fan of those movies. Like the first one is a classic, but like I have a lot of friends that are like, oh yeah, and then you get to escape from and living in the hidden valley of return to the valley of, and I'm like, yeah, no, I get to the end. Charlton Heston's motherfucking the nuclear, the fallout, and then I'm good with that. I don't need to see what happens when they get like down below.
I mean, they even had a TV show, didn't they? Like, they kept going.
Yeah. I still haven't, funnily enough, I own them all because I've heard how great they are. I still haven't seen any of the new ones, and I've heard those are great.
They are. They're excellent.
Yeah, you know what it is? I'll tell you, and you're gonna laugh at me, but this is the truth. When I saw the previews for the first one, the Rise of the Planet of the Apes, I know that like kind of a part of it is like, this baby ape and like maybe they're experimenting on them and stuff. And I can't deal with shit like that in movies with animals. Like I hate that shit. So it's like, it's just a roadblock for me to get over like watching like animals being hurt in movies and stuff.
I totally get that.
Yeah. So it's like, I always want to watch it, but I'm always like, I don't want to be sad today. Not today, Satan.
Isn't it weird, right? We have no problem seeing all kinds of deaths on screen, mass murder, whatever, but I don't want to see an animal either. And
absolutely.
I'm glad they use all CGI now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't want to see that. Even hearing the dog, like, "Arr," like a dog
Oh yeah.
squealing, I don't like.
Nope, I don't like it. Oh, I'll tell you, the movie that broke me was and I'll if you haven't seen it, I'm just gonna go with it's way past spoiler time. But I Am Legend, when Will Smith has to kill his dog because it's turning to a vampire. I just couldn't fucking handle that. I watched the rest of the movie and it was okay. The movie's okay, but like that scene literally fucking like threw me down a flight of stairs into my basement, which I'm afraid of.
Speaking of I Am Legend, I will tell you that more than Planet of the Apes, I actually knew Roddy McDowall from Legend of Hell House before I saw Fright Night as a kid. So I actually knew him from more of a horror background than from the sci-fi fantasy. I was never that big a fan of the Planet of the Apes movies, and I definitely saw the original, the first one, but I didn't remember that much about it. I think I actually saw it on TV.
There's only one scene, right? That you really
right? Yeah, right. Exactly. It's all about the twist, you know.
Yeah, I think it's a good movie, but you're right. The twist is like it's defined by the twist at this point.
Yeah.
All right, Joe. Who else we got?
Okay, so I guess my personal favorite, just for the goofiness, Stephen Jeffries is Evil Ed.
Yeah.
It was definitely an 80s dorky archetype character. Known for this, At Close Range, which is actually a pretty good movie.
Yep.
Christopher Walken, Sean Penn. 976 Evil. And that's very 80s, right? Because anybody here ever called 976 number?
I probably did as a kid. I'm sure.
I definitely did. I did it at camp. Like we used the camp phone. I don't know how they didn't figure that one out. And it appears that he moved into porn. I don't know if he was the pizza guy or the actual.
Well, let's just say as I was reviewing,
as I was reviewing
this, I read that, and it said that in the 90s he moved into gay porn. He's a gay gentleman.
Oh. I didn't realize that. I just looked at
well, that's where we're heading with this story. So
gotcha.
He was under the name Sam Ritter. So, dumb as it is, I'm like, okay, Sam Ritter. And I typed in Sam Ritter, and I think I typed in porn, which is probably where I shouldn't have done that because I just wanted to see maybe a picture of what he looked like in this era. Well, I saw a picture of what he looked like while sitting on another man's penis. But it's certainly him. And
no
it's
judgments,
weird.
No judgments.
Yeah, no. This is a judgment-free zone. It's just like the gym. It was certainly weird. It was certainly weird. But yes, he did apparently pivot into that and then I guess got out of that as well. I have a question about the Evil Ed character. All right? I'm going to ask Isaac this because Isaac's seen this movie fucking 1,700 times.
Yes.
There's a couple things about this movie that feel like are either not clear, and this is one of them. Is Ed supposed to be Charlie's good friend, or is he just a kid in school that like Charlie knows of? Because in any other typical movie of this ilk, they would really solidify that they're like best buds. But it seems like they have this relationship that's completely antagonistic, and it seems like, I did read that Tom Holland, subtextually wanted people to think that Ed was like this picked on, even very possibly gay kid in high school.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So, like, are they friends, Isaac? Or is it just that he knows, that Ed is into, like, some weird stuff? I can never figure this out every time I see this movie.
Yeah, here's the thing that I always took from that. I always felt that both Charlie and Ed were kind of the outcasts, the nerdy kids at school, but Charlie was just slightly more cool than Ed. Charlie was able to get the girl, and so I think he and Charlie are friends, but Charlie also wants to distance himself a bit from Ed in order to protect his own status in in school and with Amy. So I think Charlie probably thinks Ed is a little bit weird, but also enjoys that weirdness because he can relate to it a little bit himself, if that makes sense.
It does. I'm glad that you put it that way because, like I said, in most movies of this type, it would be very clear that these guys are like best buds from like second grade, and it's not really clear in this movie. they seem to have like this kind of like, almost like at one point he calls him evil. And Ed is like, stop calling me evil. And you would think like if Charlie was his really good friend, he would be the only kid not calling him that. Or like if someone else called him that, saying, don't call him that. But they don't have that kind of relationship. The other thing in this movie that I thought was a little odd, just me personally, was they try to sell it as if Charlie is this major like Fright Night like fan of the Peter Vincent show, and it's always on in his room, but he's never watching it. He's either studying or trying to fuck his girlfriend. And like I just felt like that was a little like, like I almost wish they had made Ed into like the crazy Fright Night fan who comes to Charlie and says, I know who can help you. If you read the descriptions of this, they're like, horror fan Charlie. Like there ain't nothing about this kid that's a horror fan. He literally is constantly trying to pork his girlfriend
that would make much more sense. That my only problem with this movie that I deeply love, and I will not find flaw with this movie if I can, but from the first time I ever saw it, the moment when Charlie goes to Ed and asks him, what do I need to do to protect myself? He should already know what he needs to do to protect himself, because he's a fan of Fright Night and horror, allegedly. But I think you're right. I know that the reason that moment is in there is so that a little bit later Ed and Amy can show up together at Charlie's house to check on him and see, how far he's fallen into what they think is his delusion about his neighbor, because they walk into his room together and he's got the candles and the garlic and he's whittling the steak and everything. So I know that's why they put that in there, but it would have made much more sense if they had not tried to paint Charlie as the horror fan in the beginning.
Yeah. Okay. I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you didn't fight back on me on that. Joe, you felt the same way, right?
Yeah, I think if I had a gripe about the movie, it's Ed is not fully developed, and so you infer that he's the '80s nerd, but you never really get that. So when Jerry's like, "You'll never be picked on or an outcast again," right? When he gets to Ed, you're like, well, it was all inferred. It wasn't really developed, so you just sort of assume that was what happened, and he was the '80s nerdy type kid, but you never really understand why.
I wonder if like it's inferred because like even because Jerry can just tell from talking to Ed that this kid's like what would probably have been called back then a spaz, right? Like and I'm not trying to be mean, but I mean Jerry probably can just smell it on him, this kid's a fucking spaz. Joe, who's next in the cast?
Okay, I think our last first mention is Jonathan Stark as Billy Cole, the I guess the body man for Jerry Dandridge. He hasn't done much. They can do much of a lot of voiceovers. This guy, I thought he was really good, and I think he should have been in way more movies. I thought he could have done a lot of. I mean, he might have been typecast as a villain, but I think he got passed over too much in Hollywood. I think he was really good.
From what I understand, with I saw the documentary about this movie, You're So Cool, Brewster. Yes, You're So Cool, Brewster is the name of the documentary. And they interviewed him, and he was talking about, if I remember this right, he was talking about that character, the Billy Cole character that he's playing, and that when he's reading the script, he figured that Billy Cole is just there to fuck with Charlie. He wants to intimidate him. He kind of wants to bully him a little bit. And Stark does an incredible job at portraying that. Just the general meanness, prankster meanness he has toward Charlie, Oh,
absolutely. He's got what I would call in my vernacular, a sockable face. Like you want to just you want to punch this guy's fucking face. Just even from the first time you see him, you don't even know anything about him. You're like, man, I want to punch his fucking lights out. He's just got like this kind of like this smirky dick attitude.
That's why I thought he was very good. I think he could have done more of those type of roles in Hollywood. And just that look. He looked scary a little bit, but intimidating.
He probably lost out to Billy Zabka every time. Like he was probably runner up to Billy Zabka for like movie dickhead in the 80s, and then he got Fright Night over Zabka. They didn't take Zabka in that, and he was like, "Yes, I made it." All right. So the idea of this movie is Charlie Brewster is a 16 or 17-year-old kid. He is living at home with his mom. His mom is a fucking incredible character because she's written differently than any mom I could think of in most movies of that era. She's single. She's looking to mingle. She's like in her own fucking world. Isaac, do you agree? She's written so uniquely.
Yes, I love Charlie's mom in this, played by Dorothy Fielding, who worked up through the 90s, late 90s, and then just kind of disappeared. In fact, in the documentary, Tom Holland kind of calls out to her and says, "Hey, if you're out there, we miss you." But she's this, this kind of airhead, single mom who is also the cool mom and is very interested in not really. She's not really aware, of everything that's going on around her. And when Charlie tries to explain to her, she kind of struggles to understand what he's saying. But she's a nice addition of comic relief. Her character and Evil Ed both provide most of the comedy in Fright Night, and I think she does an incredible job with it.
She's so oblivious that, Joe, did you notice? This is one of my favorite scenes. So in the very beginning, Charlie is trying to have sex with his girlfriend, the Amy character. And, she's that teenage girl that's like nervous to go ahead, even though they've been together for 6 months or a year. But, she finally says, fuck it. Let's do this. Tonight's the night. Charlie gets completely engrossed in the fact that his neighbor, Jerry, and the what was the other character's name again?
Billy Cole.
Jerry and Billy Cole are moving a coffin into the basement, very suspect, and he becomes obsessed with that. And Amy gets mad and leaves and goes downstairs, and Charlie finally kind of gets his brain together and goes after her. Amy very loudly says, why won't you make love to me? And Charlie's mom is right fucking there. Right fucking there. And she doesn't either catch it, or she's so cool that she doesn't care that her kid is 20 feet above her, getting ready to fucking smash it off. Joe, did you notice that? She's like, why won't you make love to me?
Yeah, the mom is oblivious until the very end when Amy wants to leave, and then she's like, that wasn't very nice, Charlie.
Yeah.
Right. So she's clueless the whole time, and then the very end she finally catches that he's kind of distracted, and I would probably wonder why he was so rude to her.
Yeah.
And I guess she would be described as a free range parent. That's what we do now. Just let him do what he wants.
We find out as we start to see that Charlie is very suspect of his new neighbor, Jerry, and also Billy Cole. And all of a sudden we start getting news clippings, going around on the radios and stuff of a possible serial killer. Women are getting killed. And Charlie, while kind of looking out his window one night. Well, first of all, a young lady he sees in front of the house who was in real life a Playboy playmate in the early 80s asks where Jerry Dandridge lives, or what house is this, 99 or 101. He sends her in. Next day on the news, this girl's dead. So now he's like, fuck, this guy is a serial killer. That's what it is. Next night, he's up there and he sees this girl with the most incredible set of breasts ever being molested by Jerry, who then, to Charlie's complete surprise, is about to take a vampiric bite out of her neck. And then just as he's about to, he locks eyes with Charlie. And this is where the whole movie kind of really kicks into gear. Do you like the fact that there is zero bullshit, zero is it or isn't it a vampire movie right from the beginning?
I like that. You always wonder, especially horror movies, right? They have to drag it out to an hour and a half, and so they have to have this build up forever. I thought it was good just to jump right into it. And this movie was hour and 40, over an hour and 40 minutes, and it didn't seem boring ever. So jumping right into it, they didn't have any dead space. Like I said, we even talk about how maybe it wasn't developed enough because they were just going from the beginning. Yeah, I like that. I wish more movies did that.
Isaac, as a writer, do you appreciate this screenplay just saying, okay, we're going to tell you it's a vampire in the first 15 minutes and not making you wait 45 minutes to find out?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because the mystery thing has been so played out, and it's actually a refreshing component of this movie to know, up front that there's a monster next door. And that scene in particular is badass because the way he locks eyes with him, like you said, and then we see him, he kind of, pushes the lady backward a little bit, and he stands there in front of the window, and he gives Charlie this kind of, God damn it, now I have to deal with you look, and lowers the shade, and you see the kind of staccato zoom in on those fingernails. I love that reveal where, all right, did he see the fangs? There was some window frame in the way. Maybe they weren't fangs. And then when he goes to lower the shade, you have no doubt those claws are there on the ends of his fingers.
So Charlie ends up deciding, okay, he's got to go to the. He tries to tell his mom. Mom doesn't want to listen. He goes to the cops. The cops don't want to listen. The great Art Evans is the detective. He's a character actor who's been in a million things. They go over the house and basically make Charlie look like a crazy kid. They're playing the game.
I can't believe he actually investigated that. Right? The cops
asked
him out of the police station.
Oh yeah, no. The cops actually like, okay, well it's a quiet Tuesday. Let's go check out this vampirism.
It was the hooker murder or whatever.
Right. The dead hooker.
Still, who would believe a teenager? Or even a 24-year-old teenager.
Let's get a little bit into the story-wide idea of the Jerry and Billy Cole relationship. Now, it's very much seems to me to be vampire and possibly a Renfield type familiar. We learn later something, and I want to ask about that later, like what the fuck that was all about, but a familiar situation, right? But there's a lot of lore with this movie. Isaac, is there supposed to be an element where we're supposed to think that these are possibly two gay guys as well? Like these guys, there's more there because there's just some scenes in it, where there's one scene where it just seems like they're very close. And I think vampirism lends itself to sexuality. And I kind of picked up on this while watching it. And then I was reading afterwards, all these things about the subtext of this Do you think anything of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that subtext is there. Now, whether it's there intentionally, I can't say. I mean, only Tom Holland would be able to answer that. But I think it is very obvious that there's a little more to Jerry and Billy's relationship than owner and live-in carpenter or roommate. I
love that line when the mother says that he's got a live-in carpenter. I'm like, who the fuck on earth has a live-in carpenter? The richest man on Jeff Bezos doesn't have a live-in carpenter. Joe, has that ever been for you a focus, with you and your wife get together and do the financials? Do you ever look to see if you have enough money for possibly a year or two of a live-in carpenter?
I mean, once my daughter gets out of daycare and into school, we'll use that freed up money for the daycare and I'm going to get myself a carpenter. I mean, I could really use one. Don't get me wrong. I have a lot of work around the house and I'm not good at it, but I don't know who has one.
Yeah. When you think about it, there are other, what could be, you can't be certain, but there are other what could be subtle clues in there. Like when you talked earlier about when he finally gets to Ed and tells him, I know what it's like to be different. Okay. Is he talking about being a vampire or is he talking about his relationship with Billy Cole?
Yeah.
He doesn't say. So it could be either one.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Now, another thing that I read about this movie, and we get a lot of Ed and we get a lot of Amy. Kind of, again, researching, one of the things I read about this movie that a lot of people kind of said was that the Ed and Amy dynamic is great because the Charlie stuff, he's kind of a bland, hero, bland vanilla character, and you get these other two characters that you care more about. Joe, did you feel that way? Did you feel because Charlie spends the whole movie in one mode, panicked and worried, right? Because he's the one that knows. The other ones are able to be more relaxed because they don't believe him. And by the time they do, the movie's gotten far enough. But do you think that imagine if those two characters weren't in it and it was just Charlie and say Peter Vincent. Do you think Charlie as a character is a strong enough lead?
I think he's fine. I mean, I guess that I thought the Amy backstory was a little bit, it might have stolen that from Dark Shadows, not even the Johnny Depp, the original,
right,
and even some of Dracula. But I mean, it worked. I don't think it was bad. It just was a little bit off. It took me by surprise, put it that way. And I think I saw this movie for the first time 15 years ago, and I completely forgot about that. It worked in the end, but I was sort of shocked by it at first. I wasn't sure where I was going. And I think, first, I think Charlie's fine. I mean, if you're talking about all the subtext, if Charlie was by himself, it probably would have been less subtle.
Right. And we learn Isaac that the the old adage of a vampire has to be invited into the house is true. Because Charlie's mom fucks up and invites him over because, let's be honest, she's horny and he's good looking. Did you guys notice what they were drinking when he was over?
Bloody Marys.
Bloody Marys. Yeah, I thought that was a great little touch. I love the scene. I love the scene in the bedroom where Jerry basically just comes at night and, attempts, to kill Charlie. Because one of the things I love, and I want to ask you about this, Isaac. Do you like the fact that Jerry, despite being this all-powerful vampire that's probably lived thousands of years, whatever, he seems like he doesn't really want to kill Charlie to the point that he tells him, forget about me, and I'll leave you alone. Do you like that, or do you find that to be like maybe an odd character choice?
I'm not. At first, I didn't really get that, why he would want to do that. But then again, the people he's been killing so far, in this little town in the 80s are kind of the castaways of society that you'll see them on the news and then you'll forget about them. If he killed a local high school kid, there would be a bigger stink. The kid lives right next to him and has, gone to the police about him, or will. I guess that hasn't happened yet. I think it's a fair thing for him to offer, especially after we've seen the expression on Jerry's face when he lowers the window shade earlier in the movie, where he's like, "Oh man, now I have to deal with you." So yeah, I think it's a fair question. I will say during that scene, the first time I saw it, he tells Charlie, "We wouldn't want to wake your mother because then I'd have to kill her too." And then he immediately throws him across the room.
She's so oblivious. She's like passed out.
It's literally immediate. He's like, "We wouldn't want to wake your mother while I throw you through a fucking closet door." Not just that, but like Joe, like you just said, okay, and I'm the same way. You're not maybe the handiest guy around the house, but would you be able to tell when some super strength vampire had like jammed your door like shut so hard that it actually rammed into the door jam? Like his mother is just like so oblivious. It's just hilarious.
Also, I don't know how that worked, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I was really confused. Like he just slammed the door and then she's like, trying to get out, but I was really confused by that. And also so here's the thing. If this whole thing would never get set up, and what are your thoughts about this, Isaac? If Jerry hadn't tried to have sex/feed upstairs with the lights on and the shades open, do vampires do that? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question. You would think that that's an activity that he would want to ensure could not be seen from the streets or from next door, but for some reason he chose to have this topless victim right there in the window for anyone on the street to see.
I guess I'm not complaining.
Look, Joe, I'll be honest, Joe. Honestly, maybe that was just the night that like he got the girl and he was like, "This girl's breasts are just about perfect. I cannot not show these things off." Maybe that's what it was. I don't know.
With the lights on.
Yeah, let's turn the lights on. Let's do this right by the fucking front window for everybody in the fucking neighborhood to see, even the little kids. So at this point in the movie, Charlie, goes out and he starts telling everybody, and he's telling Amy, and he's telling Evil Ed, and he goes and he tries to get help from Peter Vincent. Peter Vincent, as Joe said, is the host of Fright Night. He was an actor. This I found weird too. The character and the actor name are the same. Did you guys find that weird? Like, it wasn't like he's Peter Vincent in the movies and I'm, Vincent Price playing that. He's Peter Vincent in the movies, but he's also Peter Vincent as the host. Isaac, is that odd or no?
Yeah, I think that's odd, but it also, it would be more the audience would have to keep up with. I mean, they actually, they really never say the name of his character in the movies he's been in, so it's possible he could have been playing different characters under different names in the movies he's shown.
Oh, see, I thought at one point they said Peter. I think he does, because in the scene in the movie Charlie's, well, he's, look, honestly, he's not watching, he's trying to get laid. But in that scene, when the beautiful big-breasted woman is about to kill the guy, and he comes in, doesn't he say, "I'm Peter Vincent, vampire
You're right,
killer"?
he does. Yes, You're right, he does. Yeah. So that is kind of an odd choice, but I think it's probably just less for the audience to have to keep up with, because in some of those clips they show, when he has the different hair color and everything, and from a different angle, it's kind of hard to tell it's the same guy, or it was for me anyway. So I think I can excuse that, but yeah, it is an odd thing. You don't see Vincent Price playing Vincent Price.
And I guess Roddy McDowell and Tom Holland worked together to. The original idea was this was going to be a Vincent Price type character, but they both decided that Vincent Price is a good actor. They wanted to make Peter Vincent like kind of a low grade version of a Peter Cushing or a Vincent Price or a Hammer horror star from the 60s and 50s. So Peter Vincent's supposed to be like the dime a dozen guy. And, right. And you kind of get that feeling, he's willing to work for $500. He's constantly moving stations. It seems like,
he's being evicted.
He's being evicted. Yeah. Charlie goes to have him help. He doesn't want anything to do with it. Ed and the girlfriend go and get him with the promise of $500. They go over the house to prove this is all a joke. And during it, Jerry gets one over on everybody until Peter Vincent notices he can't see Jerry in his little reflective mirror, and this turns everything over. This is something I always think about every time I see this movie, and I forget about it when I haven't seen it again. Could they have come up with a less frightening name for a vampire than Jerry Dandridge?
Yes, I was going to bring that up. Jerry, a vampire named Jerry.
Honestly.
I was waiting for the time to bring that up. That's just unbelievable.
Yeah, and that is it's an innocuous name. It's not something you would associate with a vampire, but it also lends credibility to him not being a vampire. I mean, if he had said my name is Vlad Tepes, you would think, vampire immediately. Maybe the kid's onto something. Yeah.
Let's be honest. If he said Isaac Thorne, I'd be like, that guy might be a vampire. There's an 88% chance a guy named Isaac Thorne is either a vampire or the head of the Department of Transportation in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Or a specter.
Or a specter. One of those three.
We can't see your face, so we don't know.
All right. So this is where we get into some of the meat of the whole thing, is when Peter can't see the reflection, they decide, okay, we're going to go, and this is going to kind of be like the meat of the last 40 minutes of the story. All the kids are walking home. They seem to live in a really idyllic, very nice picket fence neighborhood. But on their walk home, they all have to go through the walk that the Warriors have to take between like Brooklyn and Coney Island. Like what is up with with all the alleys in their town?
Downtown LA or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, it's the longest alley ever when he cuts when
Ed is walking home. And he gets cornered by Jerry, and as Isaac mentioned, Jerry says, "I know what it's like to be different," and he gives him the bite. Ed at this point now becomes a vampire. He's one of the minions of Jerry. He goes to kill Peter Vincent, and I wanted to bring this up. I'm gonna bring both scenes up right now because I thought these were exemplary scenes, and I think they're really good writing, and I think they were filmed really well. Two scenes involving Ed that I thought were really good was when he's in Peter's apartment and he's threatening Peter, and Peter uses the cross and burns it into his forehead. And Ed has this kid reaction. He cries. I thought that was great because even though he's a vampire, he's essentially a newborn vampire. And he's this, like you said, like we talked about, this bullied kid. He's this all powerful thing. And here he is again, getting beaten, and he's got tears coming out of his eyes. I thought that was really powerful. The scene I thought was more powerful was skip ahead to the ending when Ed becomes the wolf and attempts to kill Peter. And through their little fight, Peter ends up pulling a leg off of a chair. They tumble down the stairs, and he puts a a stake through the wolf's heart. And it's this kind of really long scene of the wolf, again, this was sad, even though it's animatronic, crawling around on the floor, slowly dying, and then slowly changing back into Ed. And what I thought was great about this scene, not only do you get like the sadness of Ed, like realizing that, you know, he's dying, but like the look on Peter Vincent's face is incredible, because it's like you're seeing this guy that for years and years and years played this character in a series of movies that does this shit all the time. But here he is actually seeing this incredibly weird thing happening in real life and the horror of it all. Isaac, do you think those scenes are awesome or what?
Oh, I think they're beautiful. And you watch Peter Vincent's face transition from amazement to empathy to horror, and back to empathy, because he's watching this transformation, and he sees the monster half of Ed and that fresh kid half at the same time. At one point, you know, the mid transformation, Ed turns his head, and you can see he's half Ed and half creature still before the transformation is complete, and it's a heartbreaking scene. It's what leads Peter Vincent to his resolve that he needs to help stop Jerry from continuing, needs to prevent him from doing this to anyone else. At least that's what I got from it.
Yeah. Joe, I mean, do you like the fact that it's almost like a really true hero's journey for Peter Vincent in particular, because he goes from being this like kind of cowardly guy who's going to do this shit just for the money because he doesn't believe in it, to a guy that, like, when he's faced with the reality of it, you know, where you or me might just fucking run. Like, I'm out of this town. Like, that's a real vampire.
Yeah.
I'm the fuck out of this town. All right. But he is like, I'm going to finish this. We're going to finish what we started. Do you like that bit of this whole story?
Yeah, because at first, right, he sees the reflection. He was about ready to leave town, right? So he liked the fact that he comes around, and it's weird because he's obviously a major character, but you don't see him for a while. And so if you read the description of this movie, it makes it sound like it's Charlie and Peter Vincent the whole time, right? Yeah. And he really sort of comes in a little bit later, but I mean, he's like finishes strong, but he does this. I like the journey aspect of it. That's a good way to put it, where he's just like, I need the money, you know, so I don't get kicked out of my house. And then he's like, oh, I got to help these kids out and get rid of this vampire.
He's the Han Solo of this movie, right? He's kind of he's kind of got a scoundrelly attitude, you know, $500, I'll do anything for that. If I had to take anything away from this movie watching it this time, that scene where he kills Ed was, I thought, fantastic, because it really does. It works on two levels. The whole level of what's happening to Ed, and the whole level of this guy who's, you know, he's done this a million times in the movies, and it's passe because he's never seen it happen, because he shouldn't see it happen, because it's not fucking real. Right. You know? Oh, go ahead, Joe.
Real quick. Can I ask, why did he turn into a werewolf after being a vampire? I was kind of confused by that.
Well, like Dracula could turn to a wolf, right? Like, my wife actually said the same thing. So she never really watches these things, but like kind of half watching it. She went, "Why is he a werewolf?" I said, "He's not a werewolf. He's a wolf. You know, they could become fog, right? Isaac, am I right about vampires? Fog, wolves, the whole thing."
Yes, you're absolutely right. And Ed turns into a wolf, Jerry turns into a bat and into fog in the scene with Ed in the alley. He's the fog that is coming down the alley toward Ed. So yeah, that's all part of the lore.
Yep. And I did appreciate the cross thing where Jerry's like, you have to believe for it to work. I thought that was a new thing I hadn't seen before in movies, right? So the first cross doesn't work, and then at the end, finally, they realize, hey, this is a real vampire, and once they hold up the cross, it works on him.
I had a question about that, actually. I'm glad you brought that up. So, Isaac, at the end of the movie, when they're in the house and they're having the final battle over Amy, Amy's been bitten. She's going to turn. If they don't kill Jerry by dawn, she's gone. Charlie and Peter end up in the house. It becomes this great, 15 or 20-minute scene in the apartment when Peter Vincent puts the cross on Ed's head. He burns him and hurts him. Mm-hmm. But when he uses the cross on Jerry, it does nothing. And Jerry says, you have to have faith. Does that have something to do with the fact that Jerry's like a real true vampire and Ed's just like a baby vampire?
Yeah, absolutely. If you'll notice too, Peter is able to use the cross on Amy, because he opens the door. She starts to come at him. He holds the cross up and she shrinks away. She sees it and shrinks away. So both Amy and Ed are fledglings, regardless of whether it's actual faith or whether it's just, him doing this automatically and as a protection, and it works against them. It works against them. To work against Jerry, he actually has to have faith in the material itself, in that it will repel this however many centuries old creature.
So along those lines, how come Evil Ed transformed instantaneously, but Amy was taken all night?
That was a plot device.
Exactly. And that one is much more difficult to explain away. If I have to rationalize that one, I would say that Jerry is taking his time with Amy versus with Ed. He needed Ed to be up and about and helping him immediately. With Amy, when they have their first encounter and he turns on the seductive music and everything, she is kind of into him, but still unsure. And that's a parallel with her experience with Charlie, who was trying to not really force her, but cajole her when she wasn't ready. Jerry, on the other hand, is trying to seduce her, sees that she's not ready, and is like, and she starts to apologize, and he's like, no, we'll take your time. We'll do this when you're ready. He wants to be in love with Amy, so he is being more gentle with her. Ed is a useful idiot.
Yeah. Yeah, and big ups to Amanda Bierce, by the way, because nothing I've ever seen of her in Married with Children would make me believe that, like, under that dress, she's got that kind of, like, upper body. Like, when she said that very sheer dress on and you could kind of see her breasts under there, I was like...
They are not real. They are prosthetic.
All right. I feel better that you said that. You said that.
She did a con after that movie at some point where she actually had the prosthetic breasts at the table with her, so you could feel them.
Honestly, I'm not trying to be funny. They looked way too perfect, and I'm like, man, Marcy's been hiding that from us all these years. Like, okay, I feel better now.
So I have to bring up one of my favorite scenes, the nightclub. I love that scene. It was very 80s nightclub. It had a sort of almost like the Terminator feel with the slowness, but it was like the dancing, and every view I had of seeing nightclubs, in the 80s movies, that like mixed all of them together. Like, I really thought that was one of my favorite scenes. I was really surprised. At first I was like, well, that's kind of cheesy. Man, that was actually really good.
Where she's dancing with him and she's seeing herself in the mirror dancing with nobody because he's obviously invisible. Yeah, there's a lot of, and that was hardware. That was a hardware store that was a couple blocks down from where they filmed, and they, I guess, cleared it. An old hardware store. They cleared it out and made it into the nightclub. And I recognized him, but I couldn't tell who it was until I read later. But Jerry kills or fights those two bouncers. The smaller bald black guy is one of the biker gang guys from Friday the 13th Part 3 that puts the chain through the VW bug windshield, if you're familiar with that. I knew I recognized that guy, and we had just done an episode on that a while ago, so I was like, that's who that was. No, you're right. That nightclub scene is really good, and it really solidifies the danger that Charlie's kind of in, because Amy is like, she's going for it. You know what I mean? Like, there's something supernatural happening here, and it probably doesn't help or hurt that, it's Chris Sarandon, who's this good looking guy, and, he's got this power. And then I was surprised in the movie, because I didn't remember it, that he actually goes like full vampire in front of everybody and starts like throwing people around and like kind of hacking people up a little bit there. We get to the end of the movie, and as they're battling and trying to stop Jerry, Billy Cole. What happened with Billy Cole? What was so Billy Cole tries to stop them. Peter Vincent shoots him in the head with a revolver, and Billy Cole falls to the bottom of the stairs. And then about a minute later, now up to this point, we have been pretty sure Billy Cole is a human, right? He's awake during the day. He's been out in the daylight, so he's not a vampire. He gets up. How do they kill him? What do they do?
It's eventually a stake.
Right, they kill him with a stake.
Yeah, Peter shoots him multiple times, and that doesn't do it. So eventually, they drive the stake into him, and he does the melt away, Raiders of the Lost Ark thing.
They killed him with the Ark of the Covenant.
Well,
I was a little surprised by that.
He turns to dirt. What was he, Isaac? Do you know?
I do not know. Again, if I were to rationalize it, I would chalk that up to Jerry's ability to regulate how quickly he turns someone. Maybe he can partially turn someone so that, Billy is able to remain outside, during the day and not be harmed by that, and is therefore able to guard him, but is also a vampire lifetime companion. I mean, how old is Billy Cole? We don't know. So maybe he was partially turned so he could, live with Jerry for however many centuries, but not completely, so he could still walk around in the day.
Yeah, I was wondering if like the dirt thing was like, is he a mummy? Like what? But it's also, you don't have to have an answer to everything. But I did think that was kind of left out there. Like obviously they're not going to kill him and go, hey, what was he? I get that. Yeah, even a line maybe I would have liked to have heard. Like how long it takes to find the right undead companion. Something like that. But I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. So at the end we start to get into the heavy effect stuff, Isaac, and I'm going to ask each of you guys what you thought of a particular effect. Joe, were you as freaked out by like the Amy mouth as I was, like when she goes full vampire?
Yeah, that was scarier than Jerry by far.
Yeah.
That freaked me out. I was a little surprised by that one.
Yeah, when Jerry goes vampire, he just kind of looks like kind of semi-typical 80s Klingon vampire, right? Like the forehead gets big and, his eyes turn red and, he's got the fangs. But she's like got like a fucking, like this Cheshire cat grin of like needle teeth, right?
Shark mouth is what they call it.
Shark mouth. That's perfect. That's fucking perfect.
Well, each vampire had something different, right? Because Ed had it looked like cavern mouth because he had like stalactites and stalagmites going everywhere.
Yeah.
So each of them got the different. But I was all of Amy's transformation, right? I didn't expect the hair and the dress, and it just looked that was good makeup and wardrobe, I think, to make it look like that.
Fake tits. Now that we know that, all right, wonderful.
Ruined the whole movie. Thank you, Isaac. You ruined the whole movie for John. It's time to stop now.
Thanks.
You still have the ones in the window.
Yeah. Oh no, are you going to tell me those are fake too, Isaac? Does she bring those? Does she bring those to cons?
I mean, you can still Google Jason Ritter, so you always have that or whatever.
No, Sam Ritter.
Sam Ritter.
Yeah. No, I'm scarred. I'm scarred. All right, Isaac. What did you think of when Jerry becomes that like semi like humanoid bat creature? I thought that was fucking dope. I thought that was badass.
It was, and what I've heard, I can't verify this, but what I've heard is that was actually a leftover prop unused from Ghostbusters. Yeah, and they needed this some kind of creature for Jerry to become at the end, and they had that prop left over from Ghostbusters that was not used in that film. And ended up using that. If you look at it, it kind of looks like a Ghostbusters prop, like the thing that comes up out of the sewer in Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
Kind of has that look to it.
That's very interesting. I did read that Roddy McDowell, as he's fighting it off, actually broke the skull of the, whatever you want to call it, the maquette or whatever the thing was. And they had to like rush to put it back together. I guess he either cracked it over the head with, the bone. He has the bone. And he's fighting it off with the bone, and I guess he hit it or something, and actually broke the whatever you want to call it, the prosthetic or the piece, and they had to repair it like mid filming.
Okay, so I misspoke. I thought you were talking about the thing he turns into at the very end.
That's what I'm talking about.
When he's hit with the sunlight and he starts to decompose.
Well, yeah, he turns to that bat thing. And he attacks Peter, and then he turns into... He's like humanoid when he gets hit with the sunlight. I'm talking about when he turns into that like that almost full-size bat, and he's like he's snap, and he actually bites Charlie on the arm. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And then at the end, they figure out what they have to do is they have to start knocking out the windows. I like that. I like the fact that they just get to dawn, they're able to save Amy, and they blow up Jerry Dandridge with the sunlight. Cool effects with that as well. We get to the end of the movie, and all the heroes are heroes. Peter Vincent is back on Fright Night, and he's gonna skip doing vampire movies. He's gonna do an alien invasion one. And Charlie and Amy, are back on the bed again, and you get the idea that they probably have been together. I gotta ask both of you guys, because this is like horror movie trope 9,000. Joe, what did you think about like the red eyes and the evil Ed, kind of "you're so cool, Brewster" thing at the end? Like, can we ever end a horror movie where it just ends and we don't have any idea that maybe the thing is still there?
I thought a lot of movies then, I thought more 80s movies ended with thing that nowadays you can't ever kill anybody now.
Well, I mean, think about every Friday the 13th movie, right? They vanquish Jason. The last scene is him coming out of the lake or coming out of this or that. They did it then too. I mean, it was big. It's a trope.
A couple of them though he did. But for me, in my memory, I'm not saying it's right. I feel like more time in the 80s they killed people off. I thought this scene was bad. I was like, well, why isn't he attacking? And is he just a voyeur? Like, it was weird. Yeah, I didn't get why that was in there. I thought that was superfluous, just added to it. So I was not a fan of that part, but I mean, whatever. It's 5 seconds at the end of the movie. I don't think it takes away too much.
Isaac, do you think that's tropey, or do you like that little bit at the end?
It's tropey, but I think it's intentionally tropey. I mean, it's not something that I would need to have in that movie. This movie for Tom Holland was a love letter to the movies he grew up with. I think it works as that. And I don't know that Fright Night 2 was being planned at this point, but I do know there were plans to try to bring Ed back for Fright Night 2, and that fell through because they couldn't. It was either because they couldn't get Stephen Jeffries or something, and it ended up being written without him in it. Yeah, that I don't know.
Joe, do you want to know the short answer to that, Joe?
Or the long
I can tell you. Yeah, he was sitting on someone's lap. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. I want to put that out there. All right, so we talked Fright Night. Now, Joe, you got some of the box office numbers. How did this thing do?
So the budget was $9 million approximately. That's what I could find. Opening weekend, $6 million-ish, 6.1. Total gross 24.9. And what I saw, it didn't look like it got much of an overseas release. Maybe that probably wasn't the biggest thing in the 80s. So it made, 4 times its money back?
Yeah. And do you have the weekend for that?
Yeah. So the top 5 of the week. Let's see. Number 5 was The Black Cauldron, which is widely known as the death knell, supposedly low point of the Disney cartoons, right? I mean, they have the documentary about that. That was, considered when other studios made better cartoons. Number 4 was Weird Science, which I don't remember coming out, and that was in its first week. I was really surprised. I didn't see Weird Science back then. I can't believe I didn't know that was out, because that would still. I could see PG-13 movies, I guess, by then. And
I didn't see Weird Science in the theaters, but I saw it 8,000 times on VHS and HBO. And I watched it last year. I picked up the Arrow or someone did a really good version of it, and Arrow did 16 Candles and Weird Science. They did a few of the John Hughes things, and man, Weird Science still holds up. It's fucking great.
I mean, I'm a big 16 Candles guy too. I love that. It's probably my favorite 80s movie. Number 3 is Fright Night. So it beat Weird Science for a rated R movie.
Did you see this in the theaters?
No, I actually was 14 when this came out, and the kids who were in charge of the movie theater were, 17, 18, and absolutely refused to let me go see it. So no, I had to wait for it to come out on cable.
All right, Joe, what's number 2?
European Vacation, which is the PG-13 movie I saw in theaters.
I saw it in the theaters as well. And
that had boobs too, so I'm sure you were happy about that.
Yeah, I was absolutely happy about that. The German girl in the Oktoberfest scene, yeah.
And number 1, you could probably guess, Back to the Future.
Back to the Future.
I jumped on it, but
I pretty much assumed Back to the Future was number one from probably May to September of 85. Like, remember when movies used to run for, 70 weeks? I bet you Back to the Future was on top for... We've done a lot of these episodes, and we've done ones that have been in 85, and it seems like every time we do an 85 episode, Back to the Future is either in the top 5. It doesn't matter either. It could be December of 85. It could be, June of 85. It's in there somewhere.
So for the whole year... So Fright Night finished number 32, right ahead of Summer Rental, right in the John Candy.
I was just talking about that with someone today. Yeah. Summer Rental, that's a good one.
I'm not sure if maybe I've seen it.
Him and his wife and kids go to this beach house, and they get fucked over. It sucks. Like the pathway to the main beach everybody uses, and he runs afoul of he runs afoul of Richard Crenna, who's like the local douchebag. And Rip Torn has a seafood restaurant that's an old sailboat, and they have a regatta at the end. It's a fun John Candy movie.
I guess I did see it probably at HBO at my grandma's house. And then right in front of it at 31 was The Last Dragon.
Ooh, I saw that in the theaters like 3 times.
Bruce Leroy.
Yep.
And then so the top 10, you've probably done this a million times. 10 is A View to a Kill. To me, I guess the lower points of James Bond.
Yeah.
Number 9, one of my favorites of all time, Fletch.
Oh, yeah.
Number 8 is Police Academy 2, Back to School or something like that.
Yeah, I think that was the first one with Bobcat Goldthwait.
I think I saw it in theaters, too.
Yeah.
Number 7 is The Goonies.
Goonies Never Die.
Good stuff. Number 6 is a movie I like a lot. Did not see it at the time. Witness.
John Book. I love that main character name. I always have John Book. It's just a great name.
I saw it probably the next year at the Wesleyan Film Series, and so I was scared of everything back then. When they killed the guy in the bathroom, that freaked me the fuck out. Like, that haunted me later on. I'm like, Dad, like that was tough. The rest of the movie was fine, but that was like when they really made people, when they stabbed him. Some of these movies, like when they really wanted to hit the emotional parts or even the unfortunate, like the graphic sexual assaults they used to show, they made it pretty graphic and scary. And Witness freaked me out. Number 5 is Cocoon. So how many memes do we see of Wilford Brimley at 49, and
so
now it was Tom Cruise at 49 like 5 years ago. Now it's Paul Rudd at 49.
Yeah, it's so insane that Wilford Brimley was cast alongside Don Amici and Hume Cronin.
I know,
and they were literally in their 70s and 80s, and he was like my age.
At number 4 is Rocky 4.
Overrated. Rocky. Isaac, are you a fan of the Rocky movies?
I am a fan of the Rocky movies, and yes, Rocky 4 is overrated, but it has the best training montage of the Rocky movies.
I'll give you that. Yep, Rocky has the beard, and he's in the Siberian tundra. He's doing everything analog, and then fucking Drago's getting steroid shots and punching a computer and seeing how powerful. Yeah, no, you're right. You're right.
That was obviously Red Scare Stallone, right? He took the Rocky in the wrong direction, probably.
I even as a kid, at like 11 years old when that came out, or 10 years old, at the end, when the Russians have the turn on Drago and start chanting for Rocky, I was like, no, this would not fucking happen in a million years, ever.
And so this is like the year almost of the rated R movie. Number 3 was Rambo, First Blood Part 2.
Big movie.
Yeah, big movie. Number 2 is Beverly Hills Cop, which I think actually came out in 84, like around Christmas. So that still is number 2 for the next year. And then number 1 is Back to the Future.
Of course. 85 was just owned by Back to the Future.
Yeah.
All right. So that was what happened in 85. And now is the time on Sprockets when we dance, or actually on Pint of Comics when we rate this movie. If you're not familiar at home, we rate everything on a 0 to 5 scale. Quarter and half scale is, of course, usable. We're going to finish with Isaac because this was Isaac's pick, and I want to give that to him last. I'll go first. I enjoyed this movie quite a bit. I think at 1 hour and 45 minutes, I think that there's a little bit we could cut here and there. Maybe in the middle, a little bit in the middle for me, maybe just tiny little edits here and there, but nothing crazy. The effects are really good. The characters are really good. I enjoy the actors in this movie. Like I said, I really, really, really love the Evil Ed death scene, I thought it was, like, so dumb as it might sound to say, I thought it was pretty moving because it was these two characters. And, you know, I actually don't like that ending with Evil Ed still being alive, because I feel like it cheapens that part a little bit, because, you know, he dies, you know, he actually has to be killed and he's put down, and then, you know, oh, it didn't take. And that takes a little bit away, but I get it. I understand movies are not always made by the director and writer. I'm sure, you know, maybe Tom Holland handed in a draft and then someone said, we got to have some red eyes in the window, you know, and Evil Ed's got to say that Charlie Brewster, you're so cool thing again. Like, that's going to be on t-shirts, don't you know? So I'm okay with that. My score, and I've talked about this before, my initial score coming into this was different almost always than after we talk about it. And sometimes it goes up and sometimes it goes down. For this, it went up. I think I initially landed around a 3.25, but I'm going to lean more towards a 3.75. Again, I think there are better vampire movies. There are vampire movies I enjoy more. Let's put it that way. That's more fair. But I think this one has a real callback feel to, like, those older vampire movies, you know, and also just this great idea of, you know, oh shit, like a vampire moved in next door. And I can't applaud it enough for not making us wait an hour. You know, is he not? Is he a serial killer? What's going on here? Charlie, you know, breaks into his house 10 times to find out, and then finally, no, you know what? Like 6 scenes in, he's in the window. He's got the fangs. Maybe you missed that. Oh shit, he's got claws. That guy's a vampire. Beautiful. We're all in the same place. And we're all in the same place as audience, yet only with Charlie, because nobody else saw it. And of course, nobody else is going to believe it. So I'm going 3.75. Joe, what do you got?
So I really enjoyed this movie. And I think I mentioned, we were talking before about being scared of movies. I would have been petrified had I saw this when I was 10. A memory I have was a few weeks before that, a movie called Silverado came out. And it was a Western. And I went with my mom, and she and I used to love to see movies. And we loved it so much, we saw it 2 days in a row. But the preview was Fright Night. And I was scared to death of the preview. I was like hiding down in the seat. And the next day I like was ready for it, but I was still hiding down under the seat. we just loved the movie Silverado so much. We saw it 2 days, but the preview freaked me out. Yeah. So I guess, you know, originally I thought this was sort of going to be, you know, a cheesy 80s movie. And I think the first time I watched it was, like I said, 15 years ago, because that when Netflix had every movie, and I saw every damn thing they had practically back then. And I was like, okay, I remember Fright Night from that preview thing. I never had seen it. I rented it. I guess maybe I thought it was a little bit cheesier then. What always sticks out in my head is Evil Ed. And the laugh in the Jeep stuck in my head is kind of like a doofy part of the movie that I didn't love. But then watched it this time, I really liked it. Like I'm reading up a little bit about it and seeing it. I really liked it. I'm going to go with a 4. Like I was surprised. Like I would definitely watch this again. I think it's got good cult status now. So solid 4.
All right. Go to the man, Isaac Thorne. Now, Isaac, before you rate Fright Night, tell everybody out there a little bit about your stories, where they can find them. I suggest they go and check that out, buy some stuff, scare yourself silly. We're getting close to that time of the year again.
Absolutely. You can find all of my books and links to them at other retailers on my website. It's isaacthorne.com, and that is Thorne with an E. I've got single short stories there. I've got a collection called Roadkills that has most of those short stories in it, if you prefer that. And my novel, The Gordon Place, is up there as well. I've got links to the audiobook versions. So wherever you buy books, you can find my titles. And I'm on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram at Isaac R. Thorne, if you want to connect with me there. So on Fright Night, I obviously have a long-term love for this movie. Something about it affected me, as a 14, 15-year-old kid that has stayed with me throughout the years. It's one I go back to on a regular basis. I think a lot of things had to come together for this movie to get made. It was the era of slashers. If you wanted to sell a movie, even if it wasn't about a slasher, you gave it a slasher name, and the slasher poster, Chopping Mall is a good example of that.
Oh yeah.
Which is about, robot killers. So it took a lot of love and a lot of effort to get this made, for Tom Holland to write this love letter to his childhood and actually see it through. I don't think it could have been cast any better than it was. I'm not sure where Tom Holland and Chris Sarandon came together, but I know that he knew Roddy McDowall from Class of 1984, which he also wrote. And I'm not sure what his involvement, if there was any, with Fraternity Vacation was, but Amanda Bierce and Stephen Jeffries were both in that movie.
Yeah, they played a couple in that, right? I read.
Yes. Yeah.
I've seen parts of that, by the way.
Yeah.
The funny part is that
Tim Robbins.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was an 80s romp, an entirely different movie. Although it also had Barbara Crampton and Kathleen Kinmont in it, who are horror actors in their own right. So a lot of things had to come together. The movie had horror, it had humor, and it had heart. It had all three of the H's that you look for in an entertainment. So only reason I'm not giving this a 5 is because of the one thing that has really stood out to me as an error throughout the decades, and that was one of the first things we brought up, which is Charlie's horror fandom and having to run to Evil Ed to find out, how do I protect myself against this vampire. So that's the only reason I'm not giving it a 5, is that little story element. So I'm going to land on 4.75.
All right, we got a nice little spread there. I already know when Scary Larry Dwyer listens to this episode, he's going to call me a fucking idiot for saying 3.75, because I know he's a huge fan of Fright Night as well. I think, I could be wrong, Larry's covered in horror tattoos. I think he has an Evil Ed with nice. With the cross burnt and like that the mouth. If he doesn't, it's someone else I know does, but I think it's Larry. So yeah, he's going to say 3.75. Go fuck yourself. But all right, well. Isaac, thank you so much for coming on, and this has been awesome fun. We got to get you on much sooner again than the amount of time it took this time. And seriously, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you for all the support you show the show and just listening and being interactive with us. It means a lot, and I really appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. I love Pint. I tune into that. I tuned into the Quentin Tarantino side project as well.
Thank you.
You guys do a great job. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And you even listen to our Nemesis podcast, if I'm correct, The Insufferable Bastard. So
yes.
I appreciate that as well, because I as much as I shouldn't, I love those guys. And Joe, the scientist of Pint Comics, thank you for ably sitting in for the Manster. He should be back at some point soon, but I'm going to call on you again in the next few weeks to help me out again on another episode. So, and this is crazy. This might be the most distance episode I've ever done, because I'm in Connecticut, you're in Maryland, Joe, and Isaac's in Tennessee. I think that might be a first for this show. We've had people, maybe 2 of us in Connecticut and maybe like 1 person somewhere else, but 3
Australia.
people.
Australia, your farthest.
We did Australia twice. Yeah, and that's interesting because we have to either be up really late to record so they could do it in the morning, or we recorded the Judge Dredd episode at like 8 in the morning, and it was like 9 p.m. for him. It's like talking to somebody in the future. It's amazing. So please check out Pint Comics. We're on Twitter, of course, at Pint Comics, Instagram, Pint_O_comics. You can find us on all of those podcatching apps. Libsyn is where we're hosted, but you can find us on iHeartRadio. You can find us on Spotify, all that stuff. Subscribe, go to our YouTube page, subscribe there. We're going to try to get some more video stuff coming soon. Until then, Joe, do you want to say the final words that Lloyd usually says?
See ya.
It's over, Johnny. It's over. Nothing is over. Nothing. You just don't turn it off.